Game 3 featured both teams at full strength, with Miami welcoming back Kyle Lowry and the return of Joel Embiid for Philadelphia. And Embiid's impact was an immediate one, freeing up shooters that had been stifled during the first two games, pulling down rebounds that had been falling to the Heat. And while Miami was able to keep it close until the end of the third quarter, thanks in small part to Jimmy Butler and his 33 points, the Sixers pulled away in the fourth quarter, outscoring the Heat by 17 and cruising to a 20-point win. We'll break it all down and how the series may or may not be shifting in Philadelphia's favor on today's live edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Friday night edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. This was the game that everyone expected and Miami was trying to avoid. With the return of Joel Embiid to the Sixers lineup, we knew things would change for the Heat with Embiid's overall defense and his ability to make things easier for his teammates, and that's exactly how it played out. Miami looked shell-shocked in the first half, completely out of sync as they tried to find their identity, and with Embiid, if not exactly efficient, definitely being impactful, making things easier for James Harden as well as Danny Green, an old Miami nemesis who led the Sixers with 21 points on 7 made three-pointers. But give credit to the Heat. They made a game of it in the third quarter. After being down by as many as 14, they clawed their way back with some fantastic defense and led by Jimmy Butler, who scored 14 of his game-high 33 points in the quarter. The period ended with Miami down just 3, but then the Sixers came back to start the fourth on a 10-0 run, and the Heat simply fell apart in a way they haven't all season long, scoring only 14 points in the final quarter and losing the game 99-79, their second lowest scoring total all season since November 3rd, when they scored only 78 points against the Boston Celtics. West, we knew that Embiid was going to come back and make things more difficult for Miami, but that was the story of the game, at least early on for the Sixers. They really dominated things. They controlled the pace of the game. Miami looked like they had no answer for Embiid and what his presence brought.
No, not at all. You mentioned the offensive output there. I mean, they had a half-court offensive rating of 75 points per 100 possessions, which is god-awful. And it's just so clear the presence that Joel Embiid has in the paint just changed Miami's offense completely from what we saw in the first two games. The Heat got to the basket at will. They got points at will with that high, straight-up pick and roll between either Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero, or Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. And once you plant Embiid in the middle, face mask, UCL tear, whatever you want, his body in the paint just completely changed Miami's approach on offense, because you can't just run straight pick and roll at him at the basket. So that wasn't there anymore with Embiid back, and the Heat's offense didn't have the usual spacing that it usually has tonight. Now, obviously, part of that is the fact that they couldn't make any threes. They missed 23 of their 30 three-pointers tonight, but the Sixers did a good job in forcing them into tough looks all night long. They kept them away from the basket, other than Jimmy Butler for the most part in that third and fourth quarter. But, I thought the Heat offense looked its best when they were moving the ball side to side. They were able to get Joel Embiid on the move a little bit, and they were able to get some backdoor stuff and just get the ball moving a little bit. But they just didn't have that energy. Whatever it was, Embiid's presence, their slow legs, whatever it might have been, getting into Philadelphia after playing 2 games in Miami, something didn't look right. They didn't have the usual verve that they typically had, and that's why you had such a terrible, offensive performance from them.
Miami started off their game just completely atypically. Like, this is not the Heat that we've seen ever since Max Strus has entered the lineup. They've looked crisp. They've made passes. They've spaced the floor. They've been able to get whatever they want on offense, almost for the most part. This is only really their second loss since Max has entered the starting lineup, and it was a pretty bad one. They were going to Max early on, and he was missing a lot of shots. Eventually, he found he found his stroke to some degree later on in the second half. But by that point, Miami was already down this huge hole, and it looked like the momentum had already gone in Philadelphia's favor. To your point, Harden was able to attack the paint pretty regularly. It looked like he was getting going early on. He had a lot of spacing, a lot of more ability to attack the paint. He was getting some, in my opinion, egregious foul calls. I never liked making the officiating a point of contention, but it looked like it was leaning heavily towards Philadelphia's favor.
I mean, of course it does. I mean, that's baked in when you're playing a team with James Harden and Joel Embiid. I don't want to talk. Yeah, it doesn't matter. That's just part of what you get when you play.
I know a lot of fans will point to that. I don't think that
it's
was
already in the chat.
Maker.
Doesn't matter.
To that point, however, like he was also just drawing double teams, triple teams. Miami's switching defense just seemed overloaded because they didn't know what to do with the behemoth in the middle. And there he was just making easy outlet passes to, not outlet passing, but easy kicking it out to a wide open Tobias Harris, or in most cases, a Danny Green, who just found that shot early on. And he went 7 of 9 from the floor, all 3-point attempts. He made 7 of them. I mean, incredible, just fantastic night for Green. Something he hasn't been able to do all season long, and certainly not against Miami during the first.
It's like 2014.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Just a bad game. I like Miami's spirit for the most part. I didn't feel like in the first half Miami was completely overloaded. They were only down 6 at the half or something to that effect, maybe 7. It didn't seem like they were just completely out of it, but they didn't seem to have any kind of flow, any kind of, the energy with which they've played. And then they found in the third quarter, they found their spacing a little bit. I like Strus getting going. He got going late in the third quarter. They were able to do a lot, mostly because Jimmy was just said, you know what, fuck it, give me the ball. I'm going to take over. And he did. He was incredible. He wound up tying the game at 57, giving Miami a chance. But from then, things kind of just fell apart.
Yeah, they were down 3
14
points going into the fourth quarter, and then they go that 3 or 4 minute stretch to start the fourth quarter without scoring at all, and basically just let the game slip away. That was disappointing. You had Jimmy Butler doing basically his Ja Morant in the last 6 minutes against the Golden State Warriors the other night impression. Just getting to the basket over and over. And not just, it wasn't like Joel Embiid wasn't in. He was in for a bulk of those minutes, and he was just shooting over him. I thought Jimmy Butler, that's everything you need from Jimmy Butler in this playoff
Top 10
run.
player in the NBA kind of thing.
It was bent over the stanchion in the NBA Finals type of thing. And he's looking around and nobody's there. Nobody is there. Tyler Hero made a couple of threes in a row. Max Strus made 2 of 3 in the third quarter from distance, but nobody was really there, and he was creating all of it. That to me was the really disappointing thing. And look, I know that a lot of people are going to be like, well, Danny Green's not going to do that again, and the Sixers aren't going to go 16 of 33, shooting 48.5% from 3-point range again in this series. But this is a series. We have a series now. Even if you say, look, they're not going to shoot like that from 3-point range again, the Sixers or the Heat, stuff doesn't work like that in the playoffs. If it's not one thing, it's another thing. And Joel Embiid was gassed tonight. He didn't have anything. Yeah. He got off to a strong start. He had nothing in the second half offensively. Nothing. He couldn't do anything because he was tired. He was exhausted. And you know what? He should be, because he went 6 days without doing anything. No basketball activities until this morning. So of course he wasn't in playing shape. He wasn't in basketball condition. He's going to be in better condition on Sunday night, David. He is, and he's going to be better than what he was tonight. So if it's not the 3-point shooting, it's going to be something else for Philly. The Heat continue to have no answers for Tyrese Maxey whatsoever. That's not going away. His speed is not going away. The fact that he's twice as fast as anybody on Miami, that is not going away. If the Heat play like they did tonight, This series does hang in the balance, despite them having a 2-0 lead. And I know that I'm singing a very different tune than after the first 2 games, but I did not expect the Heat to come out like this. That was really disappointing. There was, to me, you said you didn't mind this. I really questioned the spirit of that team in the beginning of the fourth quarter. Nobody was rallying behind Jimmy Butler. They could have stole this game. They had a chance there, and they let it slip away.
I think, look, we're kind of running a little bit later in this segment, so I think it might be a point that we have to discuss later on in the show. But I hear what you're saying. I understand that other players could have supported Jimmy a lot more. I think there were some questionable rotation decisions that we'll get into the next segment that I think could have addressed some of Miami's fatigue and concern. But look, this is the thing that we had seen from Philadelphia, where they didn't have depth. They were either getting points from Tobias Harris or Tyrese Maxey, but they weren't getting anything from James Harden. Well, you know what? Tonight they had Joel Embiid. Miami had nobody. It was Jimmy Butler. That was basically it for most of the game, and that was rather unfortunate. I don't know that. I can't say that they were not, finding a way to win this game or finding a way to just make it a more challenge for Philadelphia or something like that. I'm not ready to jump off the ship necessarily in Miami's favor. I just think they just didn't know what to do. And that's what really strikes me, is that Miami went into this game knowing that Embiid was going to play, preparing for it just as they had. They talked after the game to Win saying, we know Joel Embiid's going to come back, even though he's not listed as questionable or doubtful, whatever the fuck. They knew he was going to play, and still they were just like, huh? He's actually here, and we have no idea what to do with them. And they overcompensated. They undercompensated.
Well, I don't know. They didn't even try to do the pick and roll thing because Embiid was in there. So I know they did alter their game plan going into this game because of Joel Embiid being there. To your point, I do think it still threw them a little bit.
All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit about who deserves some of the blame on the Miami side of things and the Philadelphia side of things in the next segment, before looking at whether or not Miami has a chance of taking control of the series in Game 4 and what they have to do to make certain adjustments. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Built Bar. Look, summer's coming. And in Miami, it's already here practically. And when the summer, you're going to need some food on the go. You're going to be going to the beach. You're going to be going to different things. You're going to be taking trips all over. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. You throw them in your bag, in your kids' backpacks when they're off to summer camp. Make sure that everyone has a bar so they're fueled for their summer adventures. And the best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food or health with Built Bar. You can have both. And it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. All their bars are soft, easy to chew, 100% covered in chocolate. They're delicious. Again, you don't even know you're eating a protein bar. It looks like you're eating a candy bar because you're not sacrificing any of the taste or flavor. And there's so many different additions and flavors to choose from. You can go get some of your favorites, get a box of one, or get a mixed box with all of your favorites. It's a delicious combination. You won't regret it. So go to Built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCK15 and you get 15% off your next order, but only if you go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCK15 so you can get 15% off your order of Built Bar.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. Make sure to go check out the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and the author of the NBA Big Board newsletter gives fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, and player rankings. And of course, he's got big boards. It's free. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. David, it's been a while since we've had to do this. It's been a while since we've had to get in the kitchen, take out the pre-made crusts from the freezer, find some other type of ingredients, because that's all I know that makes pie, and whip up some blame pie.
That's usually how it works. A combination of ingredients and you bake them together, and it's kind of a pie of some sort.
Yeah. The best I could do is get the pre-made crust and then get like the pre-made chocolate pudding and then dump the pudding into the pre-made crust, put some Cool Whip on top. Doesn't taste great, but neither did this loss.
No, absolutely. Blame pie. Plenty of it to go around. Some players that did not step up.
Number one, Kyle Lowry.
Yeah.
I'm giving him 40% of this blame pie, and I feel bad doing it, but that's just the way it is. And he could probably take more of this blame pie, if I'm being honest. But I am giving him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, considering that he's coming back from that bum hamstring. He hasn't played in a very long time, but he looked completely out of sorts. And we can do the stat thing if we want. We could just start there. 0 of 4 overall, missed both of his 3-point attempts, had just 3 assists. He was a -10 plus minus overall tonight. And I think he was worse than that somehow. He was completely ineffective. The thing about Kyle Lowry is he doesn't need to score points, but he has such an impact on the game with the way that he sets the tone, he sets the pace, defensively, what he's able to do most nights. All of that really matters. He's one of these guys like PJ Tucker who wins games in the margins, not necessarily through a box score. And he didn't do the box score stuff, and he didn't do the margin stuff, okay? He didn't do anything tonight. And there were a number of times where he just looked hesitant. There's one play stuck in my head. He comes off of a screen, goes and gets a wide open mid-range attempt, exactly the kind of shot that you would want Kyle Lowry to take, just a clean look in rhythm, and just hesitates and backs out of it. Ends up taking this weird three-pointer
Fade away,
that he misses. Yeah, fading away three-pointer. And it's just stuff like that. I'm like, dude, if you're going to just pass up these looks, don't even be out there right now. Just don't even be out there right now. And I know that's harsh, but it does, like, either play the basketball game or don't. And it didn't really look like he was playing tonight, if you know what I mean.
No, absolutely. Not a factor at all. There were a couple of standard hit aheads trying to reignite the offense, doing little things, calling for the ball, trying to jumpstart the offense and trying to draw charges, but he was a step too slow in almost every occasion. Trying to force too much with his passing led to a couple of turnovers there that just could have avoided easily if he had just been a little bit more patient. It didn't work. And on a night when Miami's shooters certainly weren't dialed up, somebody needed to step up, and it wasn't Kyle. He just didn't have it going on offense. He didn't have it going on defense. Wasn't much of a factor at all, really. So to your point, yeah, I don't think he should have been out there. I really thought when he missed that jumper, or just even didn't really even take it as efficiently. There was another time where he took a mid-range jumper again, the same 18 to 19 footer that we've seen him hit a number of times. It's like, well, you know what? If you're going to miss that shot, might as well put Gabe Vincent out there. And I know a lot of people are already saying Vincent shouldn't even be on the floor, but Vincent looked a lot sharper in the first two games. He was at least a factor.
Well, they ended up doing that basically late in the game, right? They had Victor Oladipo and Tyler Hero as your backcourt at the end. They took Lowry out completely. So they ended up kind of going without Lowry. And I don't know. Could you have done that all game? Or for most of the second half? I have a hard time believing that was even an option. But
no.
For Kyle Lowry,
Kyle says he's ready to go. I think he tells Spo, I'm ready to go. And Spo kind of, unfortunately,
he has to.
He kind of goes to him because he thinks that he's going to have something. And I texted you at halftime saying, you know what, with the way that we've seen Kyle play, he better step up in the fourth. If he could keep it close, we've seen Kyle take over the fourth, hit a couple 3-pointers, ignite the offense. Shit, that wasn't even an option. He couldn't be out there on the floor.
You worry if Lowry coming back now is a problem. Like, he might have been better off waiting another game, waiting for Sunday's game 4. Hopefully he doesn't
re-aggravate.
Hopefully he hasn't re-aggravated anything. And if anything, like, playing tonight gets him more ready to play in game 4, right? Because that's also part of the hamstring thing. You do need to come back to basketball activities and strengthen that thing again and kind of get your legs underneath you. So hopefully he's back by game 4. I expect him to be back by game 4. Kyle Lowry is an awesome player. He's probably a Hall of Famer, I think. I don't know. I'm not ready to have that debate. But I do think he bounces back in a big way game 4. But we're doing blame pie for game 3, and he is much to blame. Also, Bam Adebayo. He's getting 20% of the blame pie. I actually thought Bam was awesome defensively. He got switched onto James Harden a number of times, and then James finally got wise to it. And then this is the only center in the league that this happens to. Bam is it's the only center. He is the only center in the league that this happens to. Bam gets switched on to James Harden. So now you've got a, all-star guard, whatever, James Harden, future Hall of Fame guard in James Harden, getting a center switched onto him. That exact play he has made a Hall of Fame career out of, right? Getting the switch onto the center and then dusting that center. He then calls for another. This happened several occasions now tonight. Called for another switch to get a guard switched back onto him so they didn't have to go up against Bam Adebayo. That is remarkable that even happens, that James Harden is even making that decision, right? And taking like 4 or 5 seconds off the shot clock just to get Bam off of him, right? That said, he needs to be so much better offensively. And I know we've done this song and dance before over and over and over again. And this is the thing with Bam. Dude, you looked awesome in games 1 and 2. You were getting to the basket at will. You were aggressive Bam. You were the Bam that we all want to see every single night. You know what? I'm not that impressed when it's against DeAndre Jordan and Paul Reed. I'm not. Joel Embiid was in there tonight. And there were times where he did do that. He put his shoulder into Embiid in the first half. He had this one play, puts his shoulder into Embiid, steps back and hits a fadeaway mid-range jumper over Embiid with that touch right in his zone. I thought it was actually a good shot for Bam. And swished it. And it was a nice look. I'm like, do more of that. But he wasn't going up strong when he was at the basket. He got his shot blocked in the fourth quarter by Embiid when he's trying to lay it up, like some finesse shot where I think he could have just went up with both hands and dunked it. You need to see more strength in his play than I thought we saw from him tonight.
Absolutely. There were too many moments there where it was like Bam during the first 2 seasons of his career when he was coming off the bench and backing up Hassan Whiteside, like holding the ball at the elbow, tasked with igniting the offense or getting a play going for somebody else, and not looking at all to the whole to take a shot, like holding the ball, letting the shot clock run down as somebody screened around him, as PJ Tucker cut, as somebody went and did something, and not you yourself. Like Bam could have done something at that point, taking that elbow jumper when Embiid was sagging off of him. And there were a number of shots on top of all that where it looked like he was worried about Embiid's length without Embiid's length even being a goddamn factor. Like he was taking these high arcing shots, throwing like a hook shot that went like 20 feet up in the air for absolutely no reason. Like we saw this against Brook Lopez last year in the Milwaukee Bucks series. And I hate that I hope this is not a repeat of that, because we haven't seen that from Bam for most of the season. This has been mostly a different version of Bam, but he looked completely hindered by the idea, if not even the actuality, of Joel Embiid's size, forcing shots that he shouldn't have taken. Like if he had just been a little bit more under control and taken shots the way he has during the first two games of the series, I don't think they lose. Honestly, I think he would have been able to keep them in it and maybe ignite them during different parts of the game. Instead, he just wound up struggling. When he was missing free throw shots, I go to myself, "Oh, this is a game where he's already in his game. He needs to get out of it." And I don't know. I don't know what the case is. Somebody, UD, PJ, Erik Spoelstra, somebody needs to get into Bam and talk to him right now and tell him, "Look, what? You're an all-star. You don't need to do this shit. Cut it out."
No, the free throw thing is a really good point, and maybe he was a little bit in his head. I don't know what it is. It can't be the case. The Heat don't win this series if Bam plays like that offensively. You made a really good point. When Embiid is playing the gap like that, right? When he does such a good job of it, okay? He's one of the best defenders in the league, one of the best defensive centers in the league, where he plays that gap between the free throw line extended and the basket and just tries to take up as much space as possible. The way to counter that is taking and making those elbow jumpers, like you pointed out. He has to do that. Right? How many shots did he take tonight? 9?
2 of 9. Yeah, 2 of 9.
Not enough. Needs to be double digits. All right. Quickly, Danny Green, Tyrese Maxey, they get some blame pie because they went 12 of 15 from three-point range. They were unbelievable tonight. But I know that you want to hand some blame pie to Erik Spoelstra.
I do. I think we saw an uninspired version of Erik Spoelstra. So maybe 5%, 10%. I know a lot of people in our comments already. And again, we are welcoming all comments, suggestions, and questions during this live edition of Locked on Heat. So make sure you keep those coming. But at the same time, like, he didn't go to Victor Oladipo midway through the third quarter. Or he went to him briefly. He was overtaxing Jimmy Butler, who had been playing phenomenally. But he didn't move the rotations in a way. And again, you recognize that Kyle Lowry's struggling out there. Give Gabe Vincent some burn, because we've seen Vincent cook these specific 76ers in the past, and yet somehow didn't get the kind of playing time that I thought he deserved. Oladipo deserved more minutes. I even think that Duncan Robinson could have done things. Like I know that we keep going back to this, and maybe it's just the grass is always greener effect of wondering what's behind the mystery box. But I think with the shooting struggles of this team, I think Duncan could have gotten that shot. If you're already working those dribble handoffs for Max Strus and he's not knocking them down, especially not in the first half, to not give one of the best shooters in the NBA the opportunity. Like, I know there's some issues there defensively, and I know there's some limitations in what he can do as far as his versatility is concerned. Why not give him some minutes? I know a lot of people are already questioning why Caleb Martin didn't get some opportunities there. I think he might have been able to do a little bit better job defensively on Tyrese Maxey. There was just a number of decisions that were very unspo-like during this game.
Well,
and I'm not sure that I liked it, to be honest with
you. You say Spo decisions, like it was like the indecision, right? Was the main decision. Like he kind of had his rotation, stuck with it. Spo didn't push any buttons. He didn't pull any levers in this game, right?
Yeah.
And maybe he did something schematically, but he basically didn't switch up the rotations at all. And I thought, this is Erik Spoelstra, who says he doesn't have a set rotation, that everybody's on the table. Well, it sure felt like he had a set rotation tonight. It sure did. I'm with you. Caleb Martin not getting any minutes until garbage time. Why not try him out? Duncan Robinson, look, if the whole idea with the whole Max Strus Duncan Robinson thing is because, like, if Duncan Robinson had shot the way Strus did in the first half, we would have gotten Duncan Robinson benched for Max Strus in the second half. But he didn't go away from Max Strus. And by the way, I don't think that he should have. Strus ended up going 2 for 3 from three-point range in the third quarter and made some big shots down there. But, maybe take PJ out. Maybe take Lowry out. Maybe take Oladipo out of your rotation, because I didn't think he had a great night. He was okay. Just sort of a pedestrian, not really doing anything type of night for him. you never tried to go small with PJ Tucker at the 5, despite PJ playing almost 35 minutes tonight.
Can
right?
I tell you that during that third quarter stretch, I noticed a number of times when PJ did a phenomenal job of fronting Joel Embiid with Bam switch onto Harden. I'm thinking, there it is. He can't get a clean look. He's either fouling or going over the top.
I thought the Heat overall, whoever got switched onto Embiid did a nice job. Even Lowry a couple of times did a really nice job of fronting and denying Embiid in the post. And I'm not saying going small would have worked. Like, who knows? I understand that you're scared of, crapless out of Joel Embiid in the paint there, but to not even try it on a night where you only scored 79 points, to me, I'm with you. I think Erik Spoelstra, there was some indecision there, and that to me is where
uninspired,
no creativity, not what we're accustomed to seeing from Erik Spoelstra, right?
No,
not at all. All right, that's all the rest of it for Blame Pie. Coming up next, we're gonna get to some of your questions in the chat. Last chance now, get them in now. We'll get to as many as we can. But first, let's talk about BetOnline.
BetOnline.net, your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball, and this weekend's Run to the Roses as the Kentucky Derby is back. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to the playoffs to esports and much, much more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right. Let's get to some of these questions.
Yeah. Just a reminder, they can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskAllHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. Thanks so much to everybody tuning in for our live recap of Game 3. And let's get to some of those questions. I'm sure we've got some good ones here to address.
Well, the first one comes from Watch Medicine.
Interesting name.
I don't know. I don't get it. I think I thought you might know it. I thought it was maybe like a Marvel thing. I don't know.
No. All right. Not that I know. Sorry.
This series is starting to bother me. If the Heat don't win the next game, it's going to be an uphill battle. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way around it. Like I talked about this.
Team confidence. Yeah.
They had to make a strong showing. Certainly a much stronger showing in Game 3. That's not to say that they can't come back. And I know that we should talk about at some point how Miami adjusts, what they can do differently, because I know the game was, I don't want to sound the same way as we heard Sixers fans talking following games 1 and 2, because again, the mystery box. Oh, if Embiid's out there, we mop the floor with you. Well, Embiid was out there today, and they certainly did that. But Miami, I don't think Miami, while they did not play well, I don't think they were completely shellacked. I don't think that they were completely out of sync. They looked shaky early on. They found their groove. They could have made it a game. Again, I'm not hanging my hat on the fact that they were close at the third quarter, because again, they wound up losing by 20, and that's what ultimately matters. But I think Miami could have done some things differently, especially in that fourth quarter, to stay in it, change things up with their rotation a little bit, get a couple of shots knocked down early on, and they'll have their flow. I don't know how much credit, maybe this is an overly simplistic way of doing it. How much credit do you give to the Sixers, and how much blame do you give to the Heat for tonight's loss?
I give the Sixers a lot of credit, but they were also backed into a corner here. I mean, they kind of had to win this game. That's sort of, the thing that Heat fans aren't really recognizing. We have this just from Matisha Hopkins. The Sixers played desperate, expecting nothing less. Yeah. They had to win this game. You got Joel Embiid back. If you go down 0-3, even with Embiid back, the series, it's over. It is over, right? If you're down 3-0. They had to win this game. They came out with energy. What I'm surprised by is not that the Heat lost this game. It's that they lost that badly, that they didn't show any sort of verve or spirit or counterpunch in that fourth quarter whatsoever at all after that initial 3-minute stint where they couldn't score at all. So that's where I'm mostly surprised. As far as what happens next, again, Watch Medicine. Good questions by Watch Medicine. What do the Heat have to do adjustment-wise in Game 4? The first thing I'm looking at is I actually think you need to grow a pair and just go after Joel Embiid. Just attack him.
I was just going to say that.
Stop fearing.
Beat Bam early on. Get him the ball. Get into it. Just try to mix it up. Look, either you get your shot blocked or you get the foul call in your favor. But either way, you make something happen. Force the officials to make a tough decision. And if Jimmy's attacking the hoop and can get Joel into trouble, something that he was willing to do later in the game, if he does that in the first half already, when Joel's a little shaky, and we've seen Embiid can be thrown off. He can be made to feel uncomfortable. He's not going to be at 100% in game 4. He wasn't at 100% in game 3. He was just impactful because of his overall size and his ability to free things up for everybody else. But if you tighten things up defensively and attack Embiid, maybe get him to foul trouble, go back to Paul Reed or DeAndre Jordan or somebody, have them come off the bench. Hell, man, I think Miami can take that game pretty easily. Maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I really do think that if they can challenge Embiid a lot more effectively than they did tonight, they'll have a chance of making game 4 an easy victory for themselves.
You got to set the tone, right? You got to set the tone early. You need to go after Embiid. It doesn't mean attack Embiid the way that the Sixers are attacking, Tyler Hero, but you need to not fear him. You need to get Bam going early on. And also part of this too, and I'm not blaming this loss on the 3-point shooting discrepancy, but it certainly was a factor, right? Like the Sixers made a bunch of tough shots. They got good looks, and the Heat need to tighten things up defensively. But offensively too, you expect them to make some better shots, but also credit the Sixers defense. They did make things hard on them. But if you get things going in the paint, and now you've got that by attacking Embiid early, and now you've got the drive and kick option. We mentioned earlier that the offense looked a lot better going, like when you're doing all the side to side movement. We talked a lot about that straight pick and roll in games 1 and 2. That's the exception to what Miami's offense has been all season long, right? It's not a high pick and roll offense. It's the opposite of that, right? It's a lot of side to side movements, cut, swing, cut, swing, kick, swing, all that stuff over and over and over again until you generate a good look. They didn't really do that for extended stretches tonight. If you go back to your offense, play your Miami Heat basketball, right? I think you'll be much better off. This one comes from
PJ Tucker. I just want to say PJ Tucker, only 1 3-point attempt. Like that, I think is indicative of the fact that they weren't looking to kick it out to him. And maybe part of that is the fact that with Embiid's big body there, making those corner passes wasn't as easy. Maybe that's just so.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because how many times have we seen this season PJ Tucker with a shooter, whether it be Duncan Robinson or Max Strus in the same corner, and you have one or the other, that dance that we've seen all season long, one or the other will screen off the other one with a pin down or something like that and set up the other one. They would kind of do that this game, but not really commit to a screen, not really know what they were doing. And I think that did limit PJ Tucker. I'm glad you brought that up because that was on my notes. I forgot to bring it up earlier. Jimmy Benjamin writes in, a lot of Heat fans, Wes Goldberg was way too arrogant. I'll eat crow on that one. I know. But what I saw after the first 2 games. Yeah. I did say if the Sixers keep playing like this, the series is over. And the Sixers played much different tonight.
Yes, they did. So a big part of that because
that's my way of hedging.
But look, but everybody else stepped up. Like, I mean, we saw a different and better version of James Harden that we had during the first 2 games. He wound up finishing with just 17 points and 4 of 11 shooting. But again, 8 of 8 from the free throw line, 10 free throw attempts for Embiid. That was more indicative of their aggressiveness than anything else. They got, of course, the huge night from Danny Green. They didn't even have to get that big night from Tobias Harris, but they did get it from Tyrese Maxey. As everybody stepped up, it just seemed like they were getting shots from everybody. Even Shake Milton wound up being a positive factor for the Sixers too. Miami weren't getting the kind of contributions they had been getting all series long, and that they had against the Atlanta Hawks. They just weren't getting it from anybody other than Jimmy Butler. I mean, Tyler Hero was fine. He finished with 14 points, the second most on the team. That's just sad. If Bam can't break double digits and Kyle Lowry can't break double digits and nobody else on the bench, not Victor Oladipo or anybody can break double digits, I mean, other than Tyler, that's not good. And Tyler was, he finished with 33% shooting, 5 of 15, just 2 of 7 from 3-point range. It looked like they had a really good plan of attack of getting on Tyler early on, sending 2 to defend him behind a 3-point line, force him into bad shots. He had a couple of turnovers there where he just looked like really uncomfortable and didn't know what to do with the ball. This is not the best version of Tyler, but we've also seen him bounce back. So if anything, I remain confident that Miami will find a way to figure it out. Let's move on.
Yeah, this one comes from Novocaine. Trade Lowry and Duncan for Donovan Mitchell. We're not talking trades right now. We're not doing trade questions. We've boycotted trade questions for the playoffs. However, the name Donovan Mitchell strikes me as interesting here because he was sitting courtside. We don't need to discuss Donovan Mitchell. We don't need to discuss offseason plans. All I'm going to do is ask you a question, and it's yes or no. It's yes or no. Does it matter that Donovan Mitchell was courtside for this Heat game?
Yes. I mean,
okay, that's it.
He's
okay. That's it. Talk about it in the offseason. That's it. All right. Okay. Next one comes from Iron Bar 200. What should Spo do to improve the Heat's offense when shots aren't going down besides ISO Jimmy Hero Ball and this same one from the same person? How do the Heat combat these games where the offense is just bad?
Mixing lineups, I think, is a big part of it. Like, you have to find that right combination of shooters and attackers, and I know that's not easy. Like, Victor Oladipo had been a good balance of both, and unfortunately, it didn't seem like he was as engaged offensively as he has been. Finished with just 2 of 5 in 21 minutes of play, so it looked like he wasn't really looking for his shot. I think maybe part of that was the ball being in Tyler's hands a little bit too much and trying to start things going there, and he just wasn't as effective as he normally has. To Tyler's credit, I guess he was trying to fight his way through it, and it just wasn't his night. That's a night where you have to give the ball up and tell Victor, go to work, because we saw Victor attack the paint on a couple of occasions, and it looked like he was able to at least initiate something. He even got to the free throw line on a couple of occasions, and so that, to me, shows a little bit more, willingness from Tyler to just kind of step back, or at least it should show more willingness, and then have Victor kind of take over in certain stretches. Other than that,
well, I think you need to. We talked about it earlier. You guys switch up the lineups, right? Yeah. I really like the PJ at the 5 grouping, not as something that you need to do every single game, but in those moments, in those 3 or 4 minute pockets of a game where the Heat just go dry on offense.
Especially when Embiid's not on the floor.
Yeah, I honestly don't even care if Embiid is on the floor, but it's a good point. Like, it's a good weapon. It's a good option to have where you say, okay, we haven't scored for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, 3 or 4 straight possessions. Let's go small. Let's shift to a small group and just see what happens. Because once you put Jimmy and Tyler in space without, basically Bam Adebayo clogging up the paint, because that's what he does, because he's not a floor spacer, I think it just frees people up. The tough thing tonight was that Jimmy Butler was on such a roll, going like all the way up into the third quarter buzzer. And then the fourth quarter started, and it was just like, what just happened? Nothing's happening. I do think that the Heat got a couple good looks. It also, it's going to take Kyle Lowry just doing stuff, right? When you have one player out there just not playing offense, you're playing 4-on-5, and one of the opposite 5 is Joel Embiid, that's a problem. That's a problem. So you need all 5 players playing offense. Let's just start there. But as far as the half-court offense goes in general, this has been an issue for the Heat all season long, right? It's just what you do outside of those, cold streaks. You're getting the 3-point shooting you're accustomed to. You're getting the drive and kick game and the side-to-side ball movement that you're accustomed to. You're playing the defense that you're accustomed to. You got to do all that other stuff. Every team has a weakness in the playoffs. Every single one has a weakness left. This is Miami's weakness. It's not necessarily solving the one weakness. It's just, tilting things more in favor towards your strengths. And I don't think that he did that tonight. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, I want to reiterate something that we've been kind of hinting at. I think Miami, and again, maybe I'm being delusional here, and I know some Sixers fans will probably take this and cut it and say, oh, look at this, arrogant Heat fans, etc. I never thought the sweep was realistic. I always thought it was going to be Heat in 5. I thought they'd take tonight's game, and then they would, force Philadelphia to do something in game 4. This is a chance for Miami to show what they're made of. They've got the better coach. They've got the better team. They've got the better depth. It wasn't evident tonight. They weren't prepared for the return of Joel Embiid. Now they've got a very intensive film session tomorrow to go over all their mistakes and how they apply it. This is what we've seen for this Heat team for as long as Erik Spoelstra has been the head coach, teaching these guys how to prepare, how to make that counter punch. I expect him to be able to do that. I really do think this is a series that Miami can still regain control of with a win on Sunday. And I expect him to be able to do that. Even if Joel Embiid gets his points, even if Harden and Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey get theirs, somebody else from Miami's team is going to step up. I don't expect it to be Jimmy Butler, because I do think that there is something of a physical health related note that's impacting Jimmy, and I don't expect him to have another big game on Sunday the way he did tonight. Having said that, they haven't needed him to be the superstar the way he was against the Atlanta Hawks. So somebody else is going to step up, whether it's Bam, whether it's Kyle, whether it's a combination of those and Tyler Hero or somebody else. Somebody's going to step up. I think Miami wins it on Sunday. That's just my final point.
Well, they're 0-2 in the playoffs in Game 3s already, right? So we've seen this movie before. I'm not sure I'm with you on Jimmy Butler. I actually do think this is kind of the game that these are the kind of games that he gets up for. It might be him leading the way again. One way or the other. He needs somebody to come along. Somebody else on this team has to step up, whether it's Jimmy Butler or Tyler Hero, Kyle, whoever. Somebody else has to step up. I'm with you. I do think we see a bounce back. We saw a really desperate, really energetic Sixers team from Doc Rivers down to the rest of the roster. They played really well. They were coached well tonight. No shoot around and no practice going into this game for the Heat. I don't know how much that matters. I expect that not to be the case going into Game 4 based off of this. I think we see a better Miami Heat on Sunday.
Agreed. All right. Well, that does it for us. Thanks so everybody. Look, Friday night, and we've got over 100 people watching us on the show. Fantastic showing. Thanks so much for always sending us questions, for always sending in feedback, and for always being so supportive of the show. Make sure to subscribe, and thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. From the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals, Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
I'm going to go get a drink.
Yeah.